Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions, 4 p.m. BST on a Wednesday. First time to the show, Mike Jackness is joining us. A lot of people in the community will know who Mike is. Mike, do you want to let the people know what you've been up to in the last week or so whilst I'll share to the groups and then we'll get into your story?
We were just talking about real quick before we went live. I've been driving across America. We live in Las Vegas right now, and we are buying a business that is based in Wilmington, North Carolina, on the other side of the country. And my wife and our dog and my cousin piled into our Tesla and slowly made our way across the country. And we arrived late last night, and here I am today talking to you guys.
Superb. How was your Christmas? Did you were you driving all the way through Christmas?
We spent Christmas in a Motel 6.
Sounds.
It was the shadiest hotel room I've been in over 20 years. We usually go for like a Marriott or something we know what we're going to get. But we were in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and that was the best thing we could find. And it actually wasn't that bad, but it wasn't what we're used to. It was pretty funny.
Well, exactly, because obviously with entrepreneurs, everyone just thinks everything is shiny and sexy like we see on Instagram. But okay, let's start with your story. So me and you, it's funny because like over the years we've kind of crossed paths but not connected. Yeah. And we've made a couple of attempts, and obviously you got the podcast as well. You're respected in the community. You spoke at some of the events I've been at. We've been in Hong Kong together, but we literally haven't. And
we're like so we're kind of passing in the night, man.
Exactly, with all what was going on. So it's lovely to finally get you on the show and break bread with you. So it's great that we're going to do your in-depth today. Let's take it back to the beginning, childhood. What was your earliest memories of entrepreneurship?
Well, my dad's an entrepreneur, so my earliest memories are about 3-4 years old when he was doing some sort of business thing. My dad's a carpenter, like a woodworker, and so growing up, he had various shops, so wood shops, and various degrees of size. He was doing various projects. We had, I saw entrepreneurship firsthand from the inside growing up, just in terms of the roller coaster ride, because there were years where, looking back, he clearly was doing well, and years that we clearly weren't. They never really talked about that, but you could just tell from the things that we were doing. Going out to eat or not, eating ramen or not, having cars repossessed or not, things like that, electric turned off or not.
So you've experienced all that. So you watched 100%. Firsthand going from having money to no money. I mean, that's kind of devastating in itself. I don't think people realize is if you've grown up in humble beginnings, you don't know any different, and then you gain money later, and you have to learn how to manage money because no one's giving you financial literacy per se. So you have to learn all that yourself.
I definitely didn't have that, and it's one of the things I regret, and it's also one of the things that I'm really frustrated about with our public education system. It's never once discussed in anywhere in grades like K through 12 in the United States, at least, like how to save, how to balance a checkbook, how to pay your taxes, how to just do some basic money management. And as you mentioned, I mean, I think a lot of the things that entrepreneurs fall into the first time that they get money, the tendency is just to go spend it all, which I was very good at doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was terrible with money right up until my 30s, I think it was, until I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that was a game changer for me, for the way the relationship with money, not with business, not with working. I've always grafted and run business since I was younger and stuff, but that some things, it's the button that comes on that really changes that. And the point I was going to get back to is that there are people out there that have gone from doing like financially stable to devastation, so they had everything, then lost it, then had everything, then lost it. And I think in some cases that gives you the yin and yang. It gives you a better understanding, a rounded picture of, say, someone who's grown up with humble beginnings and then had to learn to handle money. So talk me through some of those times, experiences as a kid, seeing that unfold when you flush with cash one moment and then broke the next.
Yeah, I mean, my parents, and they still unfortunately do this to this day. I mean, this is one lesson that I've learned on my own, just from being an adult, but for whatever reason they haven't. But they definitely are the kind of people who, when they have money, they spend it all. They don't ever really save. They're not really in a great spot for retirement now, which is sad. And so, I mean, literally, there would be times where was a Mercedes in the driveway, remember them having like this SLK Mercedes sports car, which had to have been $75,000 back in the 90s or something. Also having a time where I got up to go take a shower in the morning to go to school in high school, and the water wasn't on because they didn't pay the water bill because we had no money that year. And so this was a constant thing that I saw in my life. There was never, when they had money, they didn't really spend it on, vacations or crazy jewelry or things like that. But, they did buy some things that they probably shouldn't have, and didn't save for the time to be able to pay the utility bills. So I definitely saw both ends of that stick.
Yeah. In terms of what got you going in terms of as an entrepreneur, what were some of the things you done early in terms of work and stuff, or side jobs as a child?
Yeah, I mean, my parents having the business, I think, pretty typical. I mean, almost always you hear stories of when a family has a business, the kids are usually doing something in it. So I was, from middle school on, my summers weren't really spent at camp. They were spent at the wood shop cleaning up or doing things. They also ended up opening a hobby shop for a bit. I helped with that. So I was almost always helping them. But I don't know, like I think you're either just born with it or maybe some of it's taught, or for me, it was more, I think, just through osmosis. I was always just a hardworking, hustling kind of person. But I wasn't really good in school, and so college was off the table. And so, as I was going through middle school and high school, and I was looking at graduating, like it was clear I wasn't going to college. Like no one was going to take me with my like C- grade average. It was tough in school for me. I was always bored.
Did you have learning difficulties or bored? Because people don't realise is that because you did come out with an education, some people just put it down to like learning difficulties and stuff. But the other side of it is people just it's just not vibing. They just give up. I hated school, but go on.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I these are things I often think back about now, 20 years later, and wonder. There was one year in high school where I had straight A's, and I was in this pilot program that they just randomly chose kids to be in, and it mimicked more the college environment. So there were fewer classes, they were tougher, they were like AP type classes. I don't even know why I got picked for this, because I think the year before I was like D's and F's and barely made it out of ninth grade, and then all of a sudden I'm like straight A's, and then the years after that I was like D's and F's again because I was just bored again. I think that. Number one, I definitely have ADHD. I mean, I was definitely not diagnosed when I was a kid. That wasn't really something that was discussed back then. So I had a hard time just staying focused and keeping my attention because I was just bored. The common classroom in America is taught to like the least smart person, I guess. And so the same things being, it's 2 + 2. How did you get to 2 + 2? Like you take 2 sticks and 2 more sticks and 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, I already knew it was 4 before like they even finished the sentence, and I'm like falling asleep at my desk. And I think in this day and age, if I had gone through school, this stuff probably would have been identified. I would have been maybe put in some other classes and excelled in those things. But as it was, I just didn't have those opportunities afforded to me. I wasn't in a private school. My parents weren't really on top of my education. They didn't really seem to care that I was not doing very well. And because they were busy in their business and working hard, which I now understand from a different level, because when you go through it yourself, you see it from a different perspective.
So you left school. Where was next for you? Like you said, university was off the table. What did you do next?
I started a business doing computer consulting. So like that was one thing that I grew up in the 80s and 90s, graduated high school in 94, and it's hard to go and think back to this point, but not everyone had a computer in their home yet, and the internet didn't exist yet. I mean, at least not in the form that we think. I did have internet, but like no one really. The people were mostly using like AOL or Prodigy or whatever, and it's again hard to imagine. Windows was like just coming out, and all these different things. We were using DOS-based computers, shortly before that, and so because as a kid I was really into this stuff. I knew it like the back of my hand. Like I knew, and computers were relatively simple at that point compared to the way things are today. And so I saw a need there for that. And basically what happened was like I went down to this local computer store and applied for a job, and they were offering like $6 an hour to be a tech to like work on computers there. I was like, you know what, screw that. I can go do this on my own. I can scrounge up enough business to make as much or more money in a third of the time. And that's what I did. So I went down and to a Sir Speedy and bought a box of business cards and got a pager, and I was in business, and I just started handing them out in the neighborhood. I put the cards in the shop my parents had in the hobby shop, and I was working there, and pretty quickly from just word of mouth, I ended up with more business than I could handle within the first year.
So how old was you? Obviously, you left school. Was this 17, 18?
18. Yeah, I
You was 18.
Just turned 18. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so the first thing you did was not go and get a job, is that
No.
you set up your own business.
Never had a job.
That's amazing. I think the same with Kevin King. He's never had a day job either. He's always
I
employed
did
himself.
end up getting a job, but like up to that point, I never had a. I mean, I worked for my parents. It was similar to a day job, right? I mean, they were paying me.
What I meant is, you left school. You didn't go into education, into the workplace, and then started the business later. You left school and went straight into running your own business. But then you diverted into, which we'll talk a bit about in a bit. So, talk to me about this job. So, you took on more work than you can handle. Did you grow a team, or where did it go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I was young and didn't know how to run a team. And basically, a couple of things started happening. I mean, this is like going now 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 kind of age. I'm running this business, got more work than I know what to do with. I start switching from home computer clients to I got landed some business clients, landed a better class of client. But my day was spent driving around the Washington, D.C. Beltway, like eating lunch and breakfast and dinner pretty much in my car, working 6-7 days a week, never having any time off. Was definitely getting burnt out. Tried hiring some people to help out. It failed miserably. And then what ended up eventually happening was one of my clients offered me a job, and I took it, and did that for 7 years. And so I kind of put the entrepreneurial thing on hold for a bit, and ended up taking that job, which was a great job.
So what was you doing at that job, and how did you kind of offload all the clients from the? Because like you said, you got burnt out. Was it more? It was more about being burnt out and not being able to manage the team than actually revenue coming in. You just couldn't handle the business.
I actually ended up making slightly. I mean, the job offered really good money. I mean, they offered like a really solid salary. It was like mid 5 figures. And again, I'm like 21, 22 years old at this point, with no college education. It was, and this is in the 90s. So, I mean, it was a great salary, but it was actually a little bit less than what I had made that year doing my own thing. But it was just the stability, that I was looking for. I kind of got sick of getting a page call. My pager would go off at like 2:00 in the morning, and someone would be like, "I need help," and immediately, or didn't really have weekends, and all these different things. I was driving around the Beltway constantly, late for the next appointment because I got stuck in traffic, and it was just a grind. And the thought of, having this position really appealed to me. There was a lot of it appealed. I mean, like, again, I already knew these people; they were a client, so I was going there every week, and they hired me to basically do what I was already doing for them, but just full time, which is helping their rapidly growing company with their IT infrastructure. They were ready to hire someone full time.
Yep.
And between the salary and having full autonomy over that department there, and being a part of a fast growing company that had locations in multiple spots. They were in the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I lived. They also had offices in Atlanta, Richmond, Charlotte, and eventually out in L.A. And that really appealed to me as well. Just the idea to be able to travel there and help them with that infrastructure. I mean, again, because we grew up relatively poor, never really traveled anywhere. I think I'd been on an airplane once up to that point in my life. We flew down to Florida one time. Besides that, it was, I didn't really get to go do stuff like that. So there was a bunch of things that appealed to me, and it was really good. I mean, it was a great opportunity for me to learn things that I didn't realize that I was going to learn. But, being a part of I think I was like the 25th person there. When I left, there was 200 and something people. I got to be on the executive team and help make decisions at a high level, and be a part of like all the inner workings of that company. Because I grew to do more than just the IT stuff. And while I was learning all this stuff at such a fast pace, I found it to be really, really valuable. When the company started going through some struggles and going, backwards and doing some layoffs and stuff, and they kind of had to, tighten down the hatches, I got bored pretty quickly. Pretty similar story to, school. And that's when I started looking at doing something else.
So what was next? You done 7 years there. You done your apprenticeship working for someone else and built some knowledge. Where were the next steps for you?
Yeah, the next thing I ended up doing was, well, just real quick, I want to mention, I forgot to mention this. While I was working at this company for like the last 3 years of that at least, I was doing a side hustle on eBay, which ended up being really important to the next thing I ended up doing. But I was a power seller. This is like in the late 90s when eBay was just like kind of coming to prominence, and I was making almost as much doing eBay as I was in my full-time job. I mean, at this point, I'm making six figures in my job. Like when I left there, I think I was making like 120 something thousand plus benefits and stuff. But I was making as much in eBay. The eBay thing wasn't enough to make me think about quitting my job, though. Like it was just like I had a good job. I enjoyed working there, paid good money. But the next thing I ended up doing was poker affiliate stuff.
Right.
And this is something I think that has been a really good lesson in entrepreneurship for me and just life in general, where if you have a personal interest in something and passion in something, it can make a really great business. And I was really into playing poker at this point. Like I'm obsessed with poker, like a lot of guys in the late 90s. You know, Rounders had come out. The World Series of Poker was becoming like a really big thing. Online poker was really starting to take off. And I played a lot of tournaments, drove up to Atlantic City all the time. Just was really, really into poker. And I was playing online poker one night on Party Poker, and on their website, on the footer, it said affiliates. And I clicked it because playing poker can be boring. You know, it's like fold, check, fold, fold, fold. Oh, okay,
and if you've got ADHD, like you said, you need to keep your attention, don't you?
100%. Yeah. So I'm clicking, like I'm reading the back of the, the vomit bag kind of thing. I'm so bored. And so I clicked on affiliates, and it said, like, if you send us 1 to 9 players a month, we'll pay you $65 of referral. And if you send us more than 10, we'll pay you $75. And immediately I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of money. Like, but I was, and then kind of in my mind, I was like, you know what, but I only know like 8 people. I'm kind of introverted, and how many people am I going to, this isn't going to like be a business. It's just going to be like $500 I'm going to make real quick. And as I'm playing through this game, I'm like, you know what, I could do something with eBay and figure out a way to like promote this through eBay. And so what I did, the idea that I came up with that night was I'll do a buy it now auction on eBay for a penny, and say that the payment terms required to get the book basically for free is to sign up for this online poker room. And it worked. It worked really well. And within a few months, I put my notice in at my job and was doing that full time.
Wow. And so where did you go from there? So you built up as a power seller, and then you've got the poker thing running alongside it, or is this the poker thing took over in terms of the affiliate stuff? Because you made it quite large in the affiliate world on the poker side, right?
We did. Yeah. I mean, we built one of the largest poker affiliates in the world, probably, top 2 or 3. It was a crazy time. We were definitely in the right place at the right time. I ended up putting the eBay thing on hold like pretty quickly, and because the poker thing was just taking up so much time. Plus, I still had this full-time job that was really demanding.
Yeah.
And so I actually remember this. It was kind of a crazy story, but like when we ended up moving from Virginia to Las Vegas, I gave all of the eBay inventory that I had to this kid that like was helping us pack poker chips part-time. Was like a high school or young college kid. I forget exactly how old he was. I'm like, you know what? Like, someone help me one day. Like, I'm going to help you. Like, just take all this inventory and go sell on eBay. Whatever you get for it, just keep it. Use it for your college fund. Because like I just didn't have time for eBay anymore. And even though I was making like $100K a year on eBay at that point, I was making that much in a month doing the poker thing, and it was just all consuming of my time. And so I just stopped doing eBay and focused on poker like 100%.
So let's talk about that, because I think the bottom fell out of it from memory. You had a good run, didn't you? Then the bottom came. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we like I said, we had moved to Las Vegas to just be closer to the poker world, and like a lot of entrepreneurs, I also was just, now that I was making lots of money, I was pissed off that I had to pay taxes. This is kind of like my mentality at that time, and like I shouldn't have to pay any taxes. Like now that I have money. And so we took it another step further and decided to move abroad. We moved to Costa Rica. And as an American, unfortunately, it's one of 2 countries in the world where you have to pay taxes on your worldwide income. So I couldn't escape taxes completely, and we wanted to do everything above board. It wasn't like we were going to go down there and do a bunch of fishy things. We still had to pay taxes, but the tax rate went basically from 35% down to about 15%. So it made a huge difference. And that's another long conversation for another day, how all that happened. But it was taking advantage of some of the Bush tax cuts that were in place at that time, and we're able to treat our income as dividends and not income. And we also had an exemption on the first 100K for both my wife and I. So effectively our tax rate was like just below 15%. Anyway, so we just moved down to Costa Rica. Like we spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get down there, between lawyers and tax planning and buying a house down there and all this stuff. And we get down there on our 3rd day, the UIGEA passed, which was like the Unlawful Gaming Enforcement Act, or I think that's the right acronym. And it was like, oh shit, like this isn't going to be what we were hoping. And I mean, the bottom definitely fell out big time that day. It didn't put us out of business, but it was definitely a huge hit. And
well, do you mind walking us through it? The breakdown, how it occurred, what you kind of learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another moment in life that, because there was other things leading up to this that were just kind of like the hard knocks things that we didn't get into, probably don't have time for, but it was definitely not the first time in my life, but it was the most in terms of magnitude of feeling invincible, like incredibly cocky. You start having to the point where you're making like $1 million a year. Money can rewire your disposition and just the way that you feel about everything in life. When I can go back and honestly say I was, felt pretty cocky, just in terms of everything. And it didn't feel like it was going to end either. There was definitely nothing in sight that made it look like things were going to go south. And then this happens, and it was actually kind of funny because like the law passed, and I'm like, this is like, no one's going to listen to this because these are all offshore poker rooms, and like this actually can't be illegal because they can't pass this law. It's not going to stand up because the World Trade Organization will shoot it down or something, because it's an overreach by the U.S. And then like 2 days later, Party Poker's like, yep, when George Bush signs this law, we're pulling out of the United States. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is actually going to be pretty bad. And this was our largest poker affiliate, and we were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from them at this point. I mean, these numbers are kind of hard to even get your head around, but I mean, it was kind of insane. And it went from that down to tens of thousands a month. So I mean, it wasn't like we were out of business, and we didn't have a huge overhead at this point. And we ended up actually taking this moment, which was really bad for us at that moment, and turning it into something really good, because we were able to expand off the heels of this quite a bit by gobbling up a lot of other poker affiliates that were panicking at that moment because they didn't know what was going to happen. And they were based in the United States and didn't know what that was going to mean to this, because this was a crazy law that got attached to another bill, a port security bill, like in the middle of the night. They hadn't even written the law yet. They just said that we're going to do this. It was kind of a placeholder. And so there was just all this uncertainty. And based off of that, we were able to kind of have like another second coming revival for another few years after that.
So where did you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, eventually by 2010, I was burnt out again. Another cycle that I've noticed just, from being an entrepreneur. I also just didn't enjoy the people and the business I was in. Eventually, it just like my core personality and morals were conflicted with being in that business. If you can think of the stereotypes of...
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's about all affiliates. I've had to deal with affiliates before, and I always say, you need to count your fingers after you shake their hands, like some of these bigger guys, because a lot of the success comes from not having a moral compass. It's literally about making money. It's lists of making money, and it's like I go out to their hitman for hire. They go out to the highest bidder, and then you blend that with something like poker, and you mix that something with Vegas, and then before you know it, you've got a big concoction there, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely that. And even though I didn't want to be that guy or surrounded by those people, it was like 99% of the people in that industry were exactly like
Sleazy.
you're saying, sleazy. I mean, it's just the way
Yeah.
that it is. Just call
Yeah.
it what it is.
Yeah.
And we were affiliates, but we didn't look at ourselves that way because we had come up with this like incentivized thing where we're going to give you a book or a set of poker chips, and we had a community, and we were, thinking about things from as a business in that way. It did help us because we were like the only trustworthy people, and or very one of the few. I don't want to say we're the only ones. There's definitely were other ones, but it's the thing that allowed us to have these other deals. I mean, the deals I was mentioning, we ended up doing with no money down. They gave us their business and said, just give us a part of the profits moving forward because we have no idea what's going on, and we trust you to run this. And so we ended up getting several multi-million-dollar businesses in that way. But again, over more time, like we would travel to conferences. Like think about like e-commerce. Like you go to these conferences, and it's such a joy. Like the people are awesome. Like I thoroughly enjoy being around the people in this business. Like,
And that's what we've all missed this year. I mean, everyone's desperate to get back out on the road, because that vibe you get. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I miss it so much. I mean, just being able to hang out with people like you, and have a beer in Hong Kong and have these experiences. I mean, and it's just like, again, it's super enjoyable versus like I go to London for the gaming conference, and like I mean, I haven't heard it put that way, but it was exactly how I felt. Like I'd shake their hand and see if I still had 5 fingers, or my wedding ring was still on my finger. It's just like, and it's just like how it felt like 3 times a year going to these conferences. And eventually I was like, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And so I just quit. I left it. And that was on December 31st, 2010. And I gave the business to my partner and let him run it at that point.
But this is the thing, you make a stand, you do what you feel's right for you, because I think that's the problem when you're a lot younger, without patronising anyone in the audience. I'm quite old at 45. When you chase the money, and it's like, there it is, the money's there, and it's going to make the difference, it's going to make all the happiness and everything else. And then sometimes you chase that money and you're like, yeah, but I need to make that compromise, and then that compromise there. And it all feels a little bit icky, and you need to go and have a shower because it's like, I don't really want to go down that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a price to pay sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes just playing the long game and saying no early doors and playing the long game make all the difference, because I do think peace of mind is everything, really. Yeah, you get up every day. Like you said, you need to look in the mirror. And when you look back, are you happy with that person that you see? Because no amount of money in the world is going to fix that. Yeah, none. You got 100%. That's got to be done first. So
but it's easier to have that conversation and look at yourself in the mirror when you have money versus when you're broke. Yeah. And so
it's tough. Yeah,
I certainly made decisions. I hate people when they're like they get all high and mighty when they're in a great position. It's easy to do, and it's certainly
exactly
how it happened for me, but I haven't lost sight of the fact that was exactly the case, because I know that if I was kicked back to the curb and had absolutely nothing, that I would go figure out a way to eat.
The thing is, you got to do what you got to do, and that's when you're making those compromises. But what you done was you gave it up because it's like, I got to this stage, I tasted it, and it's like, fuck this, I've had enough. Yeah. And then you made a conscious decision to go a different way to make you, because you chose your happiness and your well-being over the money. So what was next?
Yeah. So I mean, we left that in December of 2010. Again, I was a little bit burned out as well, so we bought an RV. We started driving around the country, just my wife and I, and kind of just recharging the batteries, and just taking some time off, kind of taking 6-9 months sabbatical. And as we were driving around, I was kind of formulating what I wanted to do next, which was, I was like, you know what, I know a lot about affiliate marketing. I really kind of enjoyed some aspects of it. And so I really wanted to do more of that, but like in a quote unquote legitimate industry. Things like, let's say WordPress themes or website hostings and stuff like this. And so I started buying a bunch of domain names as investments. I mean, we had, a good chunk of change saved up from the poker business. And so I started buying, 5- and 6-figure domain names like treadmill.com, websitehosting.com, WordPressthemes.com, graphicdesign.com, just a whole bunch of just pillar.
You were dropping 6 figures on domain names.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were confident to get your money back on those, of course. Obviously, yours, you wouldn't have done it. So
yeah, and it's definitely worked out overall for sure. And we can talk about some specifics, but
yeah,
it's definitely done quite well.
Yeah.
And what I didn't really put together, though, and it took a couple more years, it wasn't necessarily that it was the poker affiliate industry that was the problem. It was more just the affiliate industry. So I mean, yes, we got into what I kept on saying was like quote unquote more legitimate niches, because the gaming niche always had this stigma around it that bothered me, and I didn't want to have that. So I was like, I'll get into WordPress themes or web hosting or online degree stuff or whatever, and it won't have that. But it did. And so we're like a couple years into that like kind of revival. I mean, we're doing quite well. I mean, because we had these keyword domains, and I had the knowledge of how to break into a even competitive niche like web hosting. We were still doing it really, really well. I mean, we had built another 7-figure business by this point. And I was out on a walk one day. I actually it's funny how you remember some moments. And like we were on a hike in Oregon, and I was like, you know what? Like the real issue here is this affiliate stuff that I'm doing. It wasn't the poker part of it necessarily. It's just like this whole affiliate industry is kind of sleazy, like at least the way that we were doing it. I was like, I really want to do something better for the world. Like I feel like, I'm talented online. Like I can drive traffic and I can drive business, but like I'd rather be doing something that actually makes someone's life better, as the person paying the money on the other end of the click, that would just provide more value to the world. And so I was like, you know what, I want to get into e-commerce. Like all this happened like on one walk, on one like thought process. So I was like, and we own treadmill.com. We had started making it an affiliate site. I was like, let's just start selling fitness equipment. Let's sell the stuff directly to customers, and we'll have it'll be a much better life. We'll be actually giving people the product. We won't be confusing them or bait and switching them to go to, click through our links and go to Sports Authority or some other site to actually buy the equipment. We'll be the ones doing it, and we'll make sure that they have a good experience. Like we'll have these awesome relationships with the manufacturers. We'll sell millions of dollars of equipment and like, be deemed a hero in this niche. It obviously didn't work out this way, but this was the thought that I had.
Well, you haven't done too bad, as we'll find out in your story later. Yeah,
I mean, it all worked out in the end, but I definitely still had some naivete and some ego that needed to be put in check. And next thing you knew, like 2-3 months later, after we figured out how the hell to even launch a e-commerce site and at least figure out some basic initial relationships to find the equipment to sell, we were in business selling fitness equipment.
So let's start walking it. So what year is this? Because this is when when you got into commerce, it was straight into Amazon, or was it built on your own website first and then you discovered Amazon later?
It was built on our own website. We hadn't even considered Amazon at this point. This was late 2012. We launched on BigCommerce. Shopify did exist at that point, obviously, but it kind of came down to Shopify or BigCommerce, and there were some technical things that were better about BigCommerce at the time that made us go that route. And so, we launched treadmill.com on BigCommerce.
Cool. And then let's walk through there. So obviously you had the background. A lot of people come to Amazon first, then go off of Amazon and build their store, because that's a lot easier where the traffic's already focused on the platform. You just got to come with the products. But with you, with the affiliate background and website info, you understood commerce, or you understood how to drive traffic anyway. So how you built on to treadmill.com, right? So you obviously selling treadmills. What else? What other items you selling? Because they're high ticket value items, aren't they? So how was it?
We had treadmills, elliptical machines, exercise bikes. That type of fitness equipment.
And did you find that okay to convert because of the price point of them, in terms of the traffic that you're driving and the amount of money that people are handing over? It's not one of those kind of, off the cuff gesture payments of $20-$30. You know?
No, it was incredibly difficult. Again, this is where just complete being naive, like, hurt. I didn't even consider that. Like, what my thought process was, and it's still for a long time, always went back to poker. But it's like, oh, we're going to sell a $2,000 treadmill. We'll make $200 off each show. That's kind of like the same as a poker CPA, and this is going to be awesome. We're going to have poker money again. And you brought up the obvious. Again, I was young and stupid and didn't think through all these other things. But yeah, it's hard to get someone to just hand you $2,000 over the internet. And the other problems that I didn't realize were we weren't the only ones selling it. There's all the other people out there on the internet selling the same piece of equipment, including the manufacturer directly. You're being held to MAP pricing, but they would break it all the time. Not only is it an expensive piece of equipment, but then like that means that you have to provide higher level of support. Returns were a nightmare because like sometimes people didn't want the thing, and then like how do you get this piece of equipment back? We were doing drop shipping because we didn't actually own the equipment, and so like trying to get it delivered on time was a nightmare, and it just turned out to be a nightmare industry. But I definitely fell in love with e-commerce, and so a couple of things happened. Like I cut my teeth on e-commerce over those few years, and also learned like what I didn't want to be selling.
Well, the thing is, being that you're doing a drop ship, it was effectively you were just driving traffic to a website, weren't you? Because you're not got any inventory costs. You drop ship. You had all the nightmares around it, but it allowed you to basically cut your teeth in terms of working online in commerce without them additional expenses. But obviously, you racked up a lot of advertising costs. I take it.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely the advertising costs. We did a lot of SEO, so we started getting a lot of organic traffic. But the main costs were just like the service part of it, and then having to deal with unhappy customers. And so, some people, just don't give a crap, right? Like they don't even have a phone number. If someone's upset, it's like F you, like I don't care. But for me, like I take this stuff, I'm emotional about it. Like someone's giving me $2,000, like I want them to be happy. Like I will go out of my way, do everything I can to make them happy. And this is just a business where that is basically like an almost certain impossibility to make them happy, because it was very, very difficult to actually execute in this niche, to a point where like I tried solving all the problems, but just couldn't. Like I actually even thought about like making my own transportation company at one point, because I was just like, just getting frustrated with the fact that they would show up late or damage the equipment. And I just started, realizing like the obvious, which is that trying to have a transportation company for all of the United States is like not going to happen without hundreds of millions of dollars, which I certainly didn't have. But I was just like so frustrated by that point that, that's where my mind was going to try to solve some of this, and it just wasn't solvable. So we ended up selling the business and getting out of it and sold to someone.
Did you get out? Did you break even, or you just sold it? Oh, you made money. Great.
Yeah. It wasn't the failure part for me was that I saw this as like a tens of $1 million company, right? Like it's treadmill.com, for crying out loud. Like we are going to ravage this industry. We are going to be the new players on the block. We're going to, sell to some public company for tens of millions of dollars someday. It was like kind of my thought process going into this. And, from that perspective, if that's the bar, it was a failure, because we didn't do anything near that. The reality was that, which I didn't again think through, but this was a very legacy laden industry. There's a lot of brick and mortar stores that were selling this equipment that had their hooks into the manufacturer. Basically, like when we came along, they were like, if you don't stop selling the treadmill.com or allowing them to sell, then we're going to stop selling your equipment in the local brick and mortar stores. And so we got cut off by a lot of manufacturers because they felt threatened by us. So we had to deal with that. And then that was like all the good, juicy specialty equipment that we had the best margin on and could actually deliver the best on. Then we were left with the crumbs of like the cheap stuff that you would see in Sports Authority or Dick's or Costco, Walmart. The same people were selling all this equipment and also selling directly against the manufacturer in this MAP pricing world. And they didn't care that we were treadmill.com, like or any of this, or that we had this organic traffic or what our sales were, because even though we were selling millions of dollars of stuff a year, we were a grain of sand compared to Walmart, who was buying hundreds of millions of dollars of stuff a year. And so just like the whole dynamic of everything, and then again, the customers being upset with us all the time, all that sucked. I mean, and it was just like, let's sell this, let's get out, let's just sell it to someone who doesn't care about those dynamics. And that's what we did. And so we we sold it for a profit. I mean, we made money on it. The years that we were selling, we made money selling the equipment. We made money. My doggy just came to visit. We made money to, actually selling the business. But if you add up all of the money we made over those couple of years, it was nowhere near what we were used to making, and it wasn't what we had originally hoped. And so it was definitely, I felt like it was a failure at the end of the day. What I realize now, looking back 5 years later, after we sold it in January of 2015, what I realized is it was actually a pretty cheap education into a space that I've ultimately fallen in love with, and I feel like now it was well worth it. But things seem differently a lot of times in the moment.
What came next after that?
Yeah, so we sold it in January of 2015. It was right after the holiday season, and that December 2014 holiday season just took a huge toll on me. Like I was talking about, just people were very upset. Things were being delivered late. Their Christmas was wrecked because of us. A lot of those conversations. And so we put it up for sale in January. It sold immediately. We actually got very lucky from that perspective. And I had one employee that was working for me full-time for Treadmill. He basically was the guy that was dealing with all the customer service issues at this point. And he was really good employee. And any entrepreneur listening to this knows that finding a good employee is difficult, and it's always emotional. Like when you gotta let someone go to no fault of their own. I decided I wanted to sell Treadmill. It wasn't his fault. The new buyer wanted nothing to do with him because that guy was going off and doing his thing. And so I went and bought another business basically for him. I didn't want to let him go. It was self-serving as well. Like I felt like finding a good employee is really difficult. I feel like I can go build something else off of him. Like I know that I have a good base in terms of there's someone that's going to do a lot of things that I don't want to do with this new business. And so we ended up buying a business called icewraps.com. I found it on BizBuySell. It was this struggling site that had been around for like 7 years. This guy was like an absentee owner. It had like its heyday at one point, doing 7 figures a year. The guy had kind of run it into the ground, and it was on the doorstep of going bankrupt. And so he was looking to get anything for it other than just like shutting it down and getting nothing for it. So he was desperate. And we ended up buying it for $50,000, which included everything, like all the inventory that they had at that point, the domain name, all the IP, the customer list, everything, just a $50,000 kind of fire sale. And it's been, if not the best investment I've ever made in terms of percentage of returns, definitely one of the best I've ever made. I mean, it's done incredibly well. And so it's just funny how things work out.
So you effectively, that's good character traits, by the way. He's like, you wanted to make sure that this person who served you well at your previous company, you went and bought a new business to satisfy him, but ends up being a great investment for you. So how long were you into that for before you moved on to Amazon?
About 4 to 6 months. And so here's what happened. Again, here's where serendipity also took an interesting turn. 99.99% of their business was on icewraps.com, but they had an Amazon account, and it came with the business, and they were selling like $100, $200 a month of stuff on Amazon. It was just a random thing here or there would trickle in. And so for the first like 4 to 6 months, I was 100% focused on the website and fixing all of the issues that they had there. And it was turning around rapidly. I mean, it was doing really, really well. But like 6 months into it, I kind of solved all the world's problems in regards to that. There wasn't a whole lot left to do. And so I started kind of drifting off into like, what else can we do to expand this business? And that's when it kind of hit me like, well, there's this Amazon account here. Let me just see what's here potentially. And what I ended up finding out was there was we were still at this point, we hadn't made our own products yet. That was like the next thing we ended up doing after this. But we were buying other manufacturers' products and reselling them on icewraps.com. And we had their full catalog available to sell either on our website or on Amazon. And so I got a VA to go through all of our manufacturers, see like what was on Amazon, what was selling, what wasn't. And that's when we really made a push to sell on Amazon, which is basically selling other people's products, other manufacturers' products that were already on Amazon that kind of had some sales history. And we started, just being another seller on existing SKUs. And that was the moment where we had this aha moment with Amazon. Cause I sent in some like a few cases of some test items, and I woke up the next morning, they were all sold. I was like, holy crap. like what is this Amazon thing? And things went kind of crazy from there.
So let's talk about scaling up on Amazon. So 2015 is the first time, obviously you'd been an eBay seller before.
Yeah.
Amazon was new to you. Did you realize the sophistication behind it and everything else? It was just, you fell into it because you had the Amazon account. and then it started to open up on Pandora's box, and everything's flying out the door. What did you do there to capitalize?
Well, I mean, I think as a seasoned entrepreneur at this point, like one of the things that you start to develop is a keen sense for opportunity, right? And so, I mean, it was like a holy shit, moment, right? It was just like, this is like you say, kind of open Pandora's box. And I was capitalized, right? Like, I mean, that's the other thing that like helps in life when at this point, like we had some money in the bank. And so I just like placed a 6-figure order with our suppliers and started just buying. Like, I mean, it wasn't even like, let's tiptoe. It was just like, let's buy. We'll start throwing stuff on Amazon. Like some stuff might not sell. That's fine. I'll throw it away. But the stuff that's going to sell, like I'll know the answer, and then we'll just buy more of that. And yeah, I mean, like really quickly things just exploded. I mean, it was crazy. There was a lot of lessons learned. It didn't all work out the way that I hoped. And ultimately, where the real success for us on Amazon came in was selling our own products, not other people's products, which is probably pretty obvious. But at that moment in time, and again, this is 2015, where the dynamic on Amazon was very, very different. But this was like one thing led to another, all because we just happened to get that Amazon account on that ice wraps business we bought.
Well, this is the thing. So you bought that and you sold the treadmill. So I think you bought and sold 3 companies so far between now and 2020, right? So where did you go with ice wraps there? What was the next step? You grew it on Amazon. Like you mentioned, you started manufacturing your own products. What was the next step for you there?
Yeah, so the manufacturing of our own products was like the big next step. I started realizing quickly what was going to be some pitfalls in selling other people's products. And namely the fact that like I wasn't the only smart person in the room. Like there's a lot of people out there that are way smarter than me that eventually started having access to tools like Jungle Scout. I mean, those things didn't even exist yet, at least not in the form that they do now. And so quickly there was other competition, other people selling those same products. And so I saw, okay, like this is not a long-term business. We're making some cash right now, but this isn't going to last forever. We also had like launched our own SKUs, like using other people's products. Like one of the things that we were doing was like, there's this company called Mueller that sells athletic tape, and they sell it in like cases of 48. And we would take it and repackage it in packs of 6 because it seemed like there was an opportunity there to sell that on Amazon. And that took off like wildfire. Like we were selling more packs of 6 than anybody was selling in the case lots. But it was only a matter of a couple of months before someone else had the wherewithal to just do the same thing. And so I realized, okay, we need to make a product that no one else is going to sell, and eventually we'll phase out selling other people's products. And so we already had a bunch of data. We were selling millions of dollars a year of various ice pack stuff. This is where, not just using Jungle Scout, but using your own data from other parts of your business can really help. And so we knew precisely the products that we should go develop that we thought would be successful, and they have been. And so this led to going to China, like physically going to China. That's just like in 2016, we went there, went to the Canton Fair, started looking at other things we could buy and manufacture and expand our product lines, get into other businesses. I mean, we really, we were lucky again to be in the right place at the right time. Maybe we were a little bit later than in poker because we were like early in poker, maybe a little bit late to the e-commerce or private label party, but we kind of figured it out early. And came at it from a different angle than a lot of other people were doing it, and the rest is kind of history from that perspective. And it's been a fun ride.
Cool. And so where are we now today? I don't want to jump too far ahead, but they kind of all blend together now with the private label and the various businesses you bought and sold. You still got existing businesses now. Obviously, you got the podcast. You do courses, and so what's been the last 2 or 3 years? What's that been like for you?
Well, I mean, after we did ice wraps, we launched the brand called Color It, and that was
you sold that as well, because I remember
we have sold that. We sold that in 2019, and it was a great exit for us, 7-figure exit. It felt really good as well, just from the perspective of like it was something we started from scratch, and it was our own brand, right? I mean, so it wasn't like we were buying and reselling and all these things. It was just kind of like a case study of we're going to start something, grow it and sell it, and that was a fun ride. We've also started another brand called Wild Baby, which is like a stuffed animal brand for kids. And the biggest project we're working on right now is tactical.com. We own another one of these keyword domains, and we're putting out lots of content about prepping and survivalism. It's obviously been a great year to own this business. That was just pure luck. And then we also have an e-commerce brand that is kind of attached to that. And so we're selling products that kind of is an offshoot of the content that we have on tactical.com. And as you mentioned, we also have the blog and the podcast. So back in 2015, when we bought Ice Rafts and I was getting into the e-commerce community, I realized pretty quickly that people were kind of awed by some of the things that we were doing. And it was interesting because to me, it was like I was awed by them. To me, the technology, traffic, marketing component comes super easy because that's what I've been doing for 15 plus years now. And so to me, it's just like breathing. I don't feel like I have any talent whatsoever in this space. It's just something that I've, as a fairly uneducated person, clawed my way and just figured it out and clicked on everything on the screen until I figured out how to get this stuff to work. And so it wasn't that inspiring to me. But to people who were coming at e-commerce from the other angle, which is the majority of people, which is like, I have this idea of a product I want to sell, and they're really good at making a unique product, something that's just, highly in demand by the community and people love, but like they don't know how to get their message out. And so I realized that like talking to people about that messaging stuff, like there probably will be something there. And of course, the back of my mind as the marketing guy, like I realized also that could lead to a lot of other things in the future. And so I would just decide to start blogging and podcasting about it without any thoughts of how it might eventually make money. It was just like, let's just do this and get out there. And the reality is that it's been one of the best things I've ever done because it's allowed me to meet people like you. I mean, like I would never in a million years without doing the podcast stuff, meet people like you and all the other players in the industry.
And vice versa. That's how I've got to meet a lot of people through the podcast. You interview people, you take interest in what they do. People listen to the podcast, thankfully, because, there's a lot of people will start podcasts and they don't take off. I've been very lucky with Seller Sessions and we have a big audience base. But then we're at 600 episodes. What I said to you about earlier on, it's like consistency, that kind of constant grind. And I think you've done the same with Ecom Crew as well.
We're way behind you. We're at 350 episodes, but similar principle, just keeping at it. And, it's opened a lot of doors, and that's the part, this is the part that I really enjoy. We financially, we're in a good spot, right? I mean, like we're going to be just fine. And, but like helping other people get there is a lot of fun. Like that is really satisfying, but also just becoming friends with a lot of other really smart people, has also
rubs off, doesn't it? It rubs off. Like for you and I, it's like, I'd rather be the dumbest person in the room. I thrive on that. I enjoy that. But I think people get really, what's the word for it? They get conscious because they're embarrassed of asking or saying the wrong thing. I'll show myself up on the podcast all the time because I don't care. I suppose it's an age thing as well because it's a means to an end. It's like the end result is a positive, and along that way, if you look a bit silly, so who cares?
Yeah.
Who really cares? In the big global scheme of things, does it really matter? But to some people, it does.
I mean, it matters to me. I mean, I this is something I've been very conscious about because like when I first started, just kind of sharing my struggles and the stupid things I was doing, it was quite hard. It's
but it got easier though. You explained the struggles. Yeah.
And when I thought about it, the conscious thing that I thought about, because there's, everyone out there, or the majority of people, the kind of sleazy part of e-commerce, and marketing and podcasting and the guru thing is buy my secret pixie dust in my course and sprinkle it on and you're going to be a millionaire overnight. And that was the thing that rubbed me the wrong way. And I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the realistic guy of like, this is really actually pretty freaking hard. It takes a lot of capital. It's going to be really stressful. Like it's hard to even actually get an income from doing e-commerce because like you keep on, as you're growing, you're sinking it all back in. Here's all the things that go wrong along the way. And I think that that's more genuine, and it prevents people from having this unrealistic expectation going into it that this is all going to be roses, because it isn't. And so I made myself vulnerable from that perspective of thinking through, even though it might sting and kind of hurt in the moment, the long-term thing is that it's helping more people, and it eventually, I think, will help me as well. It also, if you're only talking about all the good things you do and not any of the bad stuff, it gives you an opportunity to do a bunch of stupid things and only talk about the good thing. Now it forces me to think twice before I do something, because if it goes wrong, I gotta talk about it.
This is the other thing. It gives you accountability. Yeah. So I'll say things and I think, shit, I've said that on the podcast. I have to follow through. I'll do my best to follow through, which is a positive as well, because it gives you momentum. It'll give you the drive, because obviously no one wants to be publicly humiliated if they can avoid it. Yeah, it's not really a nice thing to happen, but I think that also helps spur you on to do things. It's like doing the podcast is when you're having days where you're not really vibing, and then you have a really good podcast, and then you get into the vibe of things, and you finish and you get on. It helps with that momentum. But just coming back round on to point of, I don't care about mistakes. I don't mind asking the wrong questions to get the right answer. I think the big thing is if you keep repeatedly doing the same thing over and over again, keep making mistakes, then you are stupid if you do not learn from those mistakes. So I don't think it's a problem.
Sometimes I have to do things a couple times before I wise up.
We burn our fingers a few times sometimes. Don't touch the fire, and you do. Yeah.
Maybe it won't hurt as bad if I touch the fire with my other hand. Let's see how that feels.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's a reminder when you burn each fingers, don't you? But it's the ability to recover. I think it's so important. Resilience and that ability to recover. When you make a mistake, can you correct it? And I think when you run fast with stuff like you do, like I do, a lot of people do, you run fast, you're going to make mistakes. The idea is, can you scoop up and clean up that mess as you run? Like you might have that kind of sieve where it's all leaking out, but can you get to the other side without dropping off too much? I think that's the balance of being an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that if you look at all the successful entrepreneurs out there, they're the ones that can do this, right? I mean, you have to be not afraid of making mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and persevere through any set of circumstances. And I'm not going to say that everything always is recoverable, because there's definitely, I've been lucky in the fact that the messes I've gotten myself into, I've been able to actually work out of. I mean, I am very conscious of the fact that there's other people that aren't so lucky. They work their butts off and put everything into it and still failed. But there's also a lot of most entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs don't really have what it takes to really keep running through the fire when the building's on fire, and they're on fire, and put every last thing into it. And I've had to do that on a number of occasions, and the most successful businesses I've had were moments away from complete collapse. I mean, the poker business we had was days away from me being completely bankrupt at one point. And
this is one of my questions. Your darkest hour just before dawn. Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I got a phone call on my birthday in 2004, April in 2004. This is 4 months into the affiliate business, and Party Poker told me they weren't going to pay me. Like, they owed me several $100,000 at this point. I had a $50-something thousand balance on my American Express card from all the free books and stuff I had shipped out that I needed to pay in like 10 days. And Party Poker said, your players haven't made us enough money for us to pay you. And I mean, if I just hung up the call and accepted that at that moment, we would have been bankrupt, and I wouldn't be sitting here today. Like, I mean, everything stemmed from that phone call. And it's kind of a long story. I'll give you the abbreviated version, but I was able to negotiate on that call for them to at least pay me enough to pay the Amex bill, and to work out a way to like make things right moving forward. Because ultimately what ended up happening was, we were incentivizing people to sign up, and they were doing the absolute bare minimum to just get their gift and then leave. Now, I asked them up front, like, if this was all okay, and make sure that I didn't just assume and and hope that we were going to just get paid. We had it in writing, and that was kind of a funny thing because they were based in India. They weren't a public company at that point, and they're like, it doesn't really matter what we have in writing. Are you going to like get on a plane and come over here and try to get the money from us in India? And they were like just blunt about it. And I was like, look, it's not about that. Like I want to be a good partner for you guys moving forward. I think we can fix this. You guys have some responsibility. I have some responsibility. I'm not trying to make any money off of this today. Like I want to make money off this when you guys make money. But if you don't pay me the money that you owe me right now to pay this Amex bill, there is no next month because I don't have another penny in the bank. Like I'm tapped. And so, I was able to appeal to their senses and get them to at least pay us what they owed us or to pay off that bill. And then we reorganized our way of doing things where people had to make a minimum deposit of more money. They had to play X number of hands of poker before we would get paid and they would get paid. And within just a couple of months of doing that, like everything turned around. But in that moment, in that phone call, like I had visions of me like literally going bankrupt because like I owed way more money than I could afford to pay. I wasn't going to pay the Amex bill. Like I didn't have enough money to get it out of that hole. I had just bought a house. I was going to lose the house. It was a pretty bad day. I mean, like I almost vomited, like literally, like not figuratively.
Made you physically sick.
Physically sick. And, luckily we were able to get it to turn around.
Excellent. Money or legacy?
So, say that something legacy?
Money or legacy?
Money or legacy. Yeah, I mean, definitely legacy. I mean, the money, you can't take it with you. And, it's one of the things I really hope to focus on in like part 2 of my life. I've been really thinking about, just doing more philanthropic type things with later stages of my life that are less stressful as well. And more rewarding, but at some point, I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. It's just a different color lipstick, and it's just I think it's just the same thing as taking drugs. I get less and less of a high off of it each time, and it's starting to just get to the point where it's not as enjoyable as it once was. And so I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but I see something on a smaller scale where like we help fewer people, but like really make a huge impact on their lives rather than trying to help the whole world. We tried doing that in the past when we lived in Costa Rica and tried to do some philanthropic things on a bigger scale there. And you start to just realize like how small you are in the world and no matter how much money you have, there's only so much you can do. So I think, something on a smaller scale will be help, some kids or something that are in a bad spot, not be the next statistic is something that would mean a lot to me.
And how would you like to be remembered?
The thing that is always important to me is just treating people like I like to be treated. And so when people talk, it's like, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? That's the thing that really matters to me. And people saying like, he's a good guy. Like he treated me right, did the right thing. Just people just saying that he's a good guy, and not having all these sleazy type things to say about people that you hear about from like the poker industry where it's just like, I don't want to be associated with those people or talked about in that light. It's really important to me. So I go out of my way to make sure that that's the way that I'm spoken about.
Well, you're spoken that way around me. Everyone I've spoken to have always said that you're a good guy. So you're definitely on the right track. That was your in-depth. How do you feel?
I feel good. Yeah, I feel good that I wasn't in a car today driving. It feels much better talking to you. So I appreciate the time and having me on. No
worries. Just go through some of the comments here. Hey, Mike, great to see you from Megla.
I actually listened to your in-depth, yes, because Danny sent me over a link of like, this is what it's going to be like. And so I was listening to yours. I thought I knew you, but now I know more about you. So it was awesome. Awesome listening to that, Megla. I hope you're doing well, my friend. I actually saw Megla this year. It's crazy. It was this year. It was 2020. Things seemed so great when we were in Singapore. and then the whole world fell apart.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Baptiste says, hello, gents. Christina says, hey, hi, wow, this is interesting. Megala mentions about the drop shipping of the treadmills. Wellington, good morning. Sirs, great interview. Megala also says, not all Amazon experts talk about their brands publicly. Why do you do it? Also, you talked about color it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it we kind of touched on a little bit in this interview. I mean, first of all, we're financially in a pretty good spot. Number two, we aren't. I mean, if you aren't willing to talk about your brands, and you don't really have a business, you just have a way to make money right now, right? It's like, oh, I found this secret product on Jungle Scout that I can buy and develop and like go sell it real quickly, and I don't want anybody else to find out about it and develop it. I mean, I think that what we did with Color It, yeah, people copied what we did, certainly by talking about it. Like, we created more competitors, but if all you're ever going to do is copy someone else, then it's hard to be successful. And we're never going to sell all the world's coloring books or all the world's gel pens or all the world's ice packs or tactical gloves or whatever it is. And as long as we're continuing to innovate, we're going to be successful. But I think it also just proves the authenticity. I think a lot of the people that aren't willing to talk about their brands or their products probably are scammers, or at least not exactly fully truthful. They're probably not real sure of themselves or confident in what they're doing, and we're just confident in what we're doing. And
I think you've got two sides. What you've got to be careful of is if you are public. I think because Kevin King alluded to this, where I had to cut out something out of an interview the other week because of his standing in the industry, and you've got black hatters and stuff like that. I think you're right. There are scammers out there who pretend, and then on the other side, you've got people that just don't want their listings to be attacked by vicious people, for no reason, And people obviously nosy, right? There's a lot of Karens out there who want to go, oh, what are they doing? Let's have a look at their, And so it's not always come from that same space. It's like I've got good friends who have got brands that they openly talk about. They're like 8-figure sellers now as well, but you do have to weigh up those costs as well. I think is that if someone attacks your brand just because you spoke about it publicly, most people won't, but there is going to be a percentage.
It only
of people
takes one, though. That's the scary thing, right?
That's it. It only takes one, like you said. Sabi says, great story. Thanks for sharing. Classic entrepreneurial spirit. See the opportunity, dive in, rinse and repeat, and work effing hard. Good on you. Yeah. I actually got told off the other day. Someone sent me an email about all my swearing. So for 2021, I'm going to try and reduce my potty mouth as best as possible. But I did let one fuck go earlier on.
It's hard, man. Like I have a potty mouth too, and it's a hard habit to break.
Indeed. Egler says, I've been following you for years. Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable experiences.
No problem. I'm glad you've been following. Thank you for the support.
Megla says, he's a great guy, which we all agree. And Yara says, great story. Thank you for sharing. Look, I think we should wrap there. Thank you for coming on. Do you want to explain how people can subscribe to your podcast and what you're up to at the moment as well?
Yeah, I mean, just Ecom Crew, ECOMCREW.com, Ecom Crew on iTunes, Ecom Crew on all the social media handles. I mean, there's tons of blog posts out there, 350 podcast episodes. Appreciate you letting me talk about it for a minute. Go check it out.
You're welcome. Guys, I'll be back here tomorrow at 6 p.m. maybe. It really depends. I'm trying to get a live stream up for tomorrow for a Seller Sessions New Year's Eve little party that I want to put on, but I'm having some technical difficulties at the moment, so hopefully I'll be here 6 p.m. tomorrow. It won't be broadcasted on the podcast because of copyright of the records and stuff I plan to play. Just wanted to do something a little bit different for New Year, so obviously you can check it out on my page on Facebook, and take care of your families, and I'll see you soon. Speak soon.
Happy New Year, everyone.